Welcome to a special Tuesday edition of the Fanatics View Hockey Show. My name is James Lynch. Look who's back. I didn't think we could get him back this soon, but Troy Noak had to get him on here. We're talking all things Four Nation. I'm going to be traveling later today, so I wanted to get the show done this week. And what perfect timing with the big final coming up on Thursday between Canada and the U.S. A lot has happened since the last time we did this show. A lot of craziness. First, Troy, we'll start with just, has this tournament, I mean, for me, it certainly exceeded expectations with that game on Saturday. Like, everyone was talking about it. People that I know don't even watch hockey were all over it. What was the temperature like in the U.S.? Because I think it definitely outdid the NBA All-Star weekend.
Yeah, it was a zoo over here. And obviously, there were some skeptical people about how players were going to handle this tournament. And I think PK Subban said it very well himself. The NHL organized this tournament, but the players decided it mattered. And it has overexceeded my expectations. Even though I thought it was going to be intense and fantastic, it's amazing. Saturday, I had friends that barely watch hockey. They only turn it on during the playoffs. I'm getting 100 text messages on Saturday. What's going on? This is insane. When are we watching? Oh, we have to link up for USA versus Canada on Thursday. It's awesome down here.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear. And then since then, obviously, we've had all the results. Obviously, Canada beating Sweden, Finland beating Sweden, U.S. beating who they beat. Well, obviously, they beat Canada on Saturday, and then the game before that, they beat Finland, that's right. So, and then last night we had Sweden beat the U.S. So it's been a very interesting tournament. Obviously, the final is going to be set, and that's sort of our theme today. Who's going to win the final between Canada and the U.S.? And we might as well get to the big news that came out today. Two things. First thing, Charlie McAvoy out. He's no longer in the tournament. I don't know where that injury occurred. Was it when he hit the post? Because they said upper body, right? I believe he warmed up yesterday before the game, and then they said it was an upper body thing. But I know he also did a lot of hits against Canada on Saturday. Do you know what is keeping McAvoy out? Because I've just heard it's upper body.
I heard that he has some sort of infection.
Oh, okay. So it's not that.
Apparently it's not. Obviously, he's not healthy enough to play, but apparently it wasn't a contact injury. And obviously, you know how hockey players and GMs are. They don't disclose too much information. But you and I are very familiar with the UFC space. Who knows? It could be a staph infection type thing like that. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So the big news, though, that has overshadowed all this, Quinn Hughes will be traveling with the team. Now, my understanding, you let me know about this because this is my understanding. Someone else would have to be hurt on the team for him to play, right? You can't just insert him in because that was the whole thing with Thomas Harley with Canada, where people are like, oh, they're bending the rules. But Shea Theodore was out of the tournament, right? He was injured. He's out. So you needed an extra guy to come in. The reason Harley played the other night against the U.S. was because Cale Makar was out. So do you think there's going to be like a mysterious injury? Like, and also, like, if you're a player, like, you probably know that Quinn Hughes is the best defenseman I think in the entire league. Does an American player just bow out and say they have an injury just to help the team, or do you want to miss out on that? Because it would have to be someone else being out. Like, he can't just play, is my understanding.
So there was a few people that went down with injuries the other day, but apparently Matthew Tkachuk, and Brady Tkachuk are all going to play in the final. Vincent Trocheck got hurt. He came back. So I'm assuming if they made this move happen on paper, one of those injuries the other day must have counted to get him in. But the real question now is, who comes out on defense?
That's what I mean.
So this could be a hot take, and I know the left-right thing doesn't match up in this equation. But personally, I was in a minority camp of my friends saying before this tournament, it was a blessing in disguise. Obviously, I'd rather have it be the other way around, but I said it was a blessing in disguise. Adam Fox and Quinn Hughes both didn't make this team because we would profile with too small of a defense group. My hot take is Adam Fox is coming out. He hasn't had a lot of ice time. He got dropped from the top power play unit. And let's be honest here, he doesn't really use his body in the corners. He's a stick check exclusive guy. And I would love to see Quinn Hughes and Zach Werenski nail down the top pair at even strength. Because Jake Sanderson played pretty well yesterday.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. But okay, so then you kind of answered my question, because my understanding is, and I could be wrong about this, I thought that there had to be another player injured to put Hughes in. The McAvoy injury is just because they don't have the reserve player to play on defense. So Hughes technically goes in that spot. I don't know if he can just come in and play. Like, and Adam Fox, like, even like, let's say, like, Adam Fox would have to be injured if they wanted to play Hughes in there, is my understanding. I could be wrong about that, but I thought that's how the rules work. Because remember, the reason Harley got in was because Makar was out. So you have Theodore and Makar out. Harley came in as the extra, right? which technically would have been Makar since Theodore's out, but then Makar was out. So then Harley comes in, right? So isn't that how it works? I thought that's how it works.
And this is what I've noticed about this tournament, because before this, like we said, we know Canada was saying, oh, what if someone can't make it to practice, blah, blah, blah. The next day, I know obviously Cale Makar missed the game, but you know what I'm saying? I think from the get-go, it should have been written very clearly. One player goes out, one player comes in. None of this.
Right. I agree with that.
If you drop below a certain line, that's when they come in. Because this is when this funny business is happening. Because United States, Brady Tkachuk, we see how impactful he is. He didn't even play 2 minutes in the game last night. He had 3 shots and 3 hits in less than 2 minutes. So they obviously don't want to take a risk. And I think next time one of these tournaments happen, one of these roster wording tweaks are going to have to take place, because we see how these teams are managing / handling these smaller injuries / sicknesses to get in the players they want.
It should be a taxi squad, right? Like that you should have a group of guys on standby in case this happens. So you don't, because here's the other thing that we got to remember too. I believe Harley wasn't even allowed to practice with the team. Like he could just come in and then he was there, and if they needed him, they'd bring him in. So that makes me think that Hughes can't play unless there's an injury, because they were really strict about that. They wouldn't even let Harley practice. And the only reason he got in was because Makar was not deemed fit to play on Saturday. So it's something to keep an eye on, because this really will change a lot, right? Like if Hughes is in there, I mean, there's no question US is going to win the game. Just spoiler alert for everyone out there. I'm Canadian. I got the Canadian jersey in the back. US is going to win this game, because to me, it comes down to goaltending. And, this is a hot take among Canadians right now, but I'm not that impressed with Jordan Binnington. He's made some good saves in certain games. He redeemed himself in the Sweden game. There were certainly some goals early in that one where he did not perform so well. But I mean, you even look at yesterday against Finland, there were a couple goals that I think he should have saved. And there's this big debate right now about, and I got a conspiracy theory for you as well, which I'll get to after, which ties into this, which I want to get your take on. But but then saying that, like, Binnington's played the whole time, like, do you want to put in Hill at this point? I don't know. It's so tough, but US will win off goaltending at the end of this thing. And I think that's where Hellebuck is superior to all.
Yeah, I think one thing that's getting lost in a lot of the projection in this upcoming final game is the United States has not given up more than 2 goals in any game. They've given up 1 and 1 with a full squad, and then 3 men short on the roster and the backup goalie, and only managed to give up 2 goals. And I don't know if you watched the game yesterday, but the United States weren't struggling creating scoring chances by any means. I don't remember exactly how many shots he had, but Zach Werenski was edging up on double digits shots on goal yesterday. Brock Nelson missed a breakaway. They were getting tons of opportunities, and that was without the Tkachuks, Austin Matthews, and Vincent Trocheck for half the game.
Yeah, and we were talking about this off air. Like, one of the things that I'm seeing from especially Canadian fans are like, man, the US, they sure showed some holes yesterday. And it's like, but that wasn't even the team we're see on Thursday. No Hellebuck, nothing against Jake Ottinger. Jake Ottinger is a great goalie. I'd like to have Jake Ottinger on Team Canada. That would be amazing. But he's not Connor Hellebuck. Hellebuck is the best goalie in the world right now. And then like you said, Matthews was out, Matthew Tkachuk was out, so you're not getting the full roster, and they didn't need to win. They just needed to, dress a lineup, but it was probably smart of them to keep some of their guys rested for Thursday, because the big game's Thursday. It all comes down to that, right? The U.S. was already in because of what they had done previously, so I think people nitpicking at how the U.S. played yesterday. I mean, I wish I wouldn't have bet them because I thought they were going to win, but they credit to Sweden for getting the 2-1 win. Okay, here's my conspiracy, and I've heard this from a couple people. So. And I don't know if they could have even done this, because I think, although saying that now they're bringing in players, but there was all this talk about the Canadian goaltending, and that they didn't have the best goaltenders, right? Because they had picked Binnington, Hill, and Montembeault. But if you look at the numbers right now, I think Logan Thompson has better numbers. Who was the other one? I think it wasn't Ingram, it was someone else. I can't remember. But there's a couple goaltenders that Canada could have chose instead of these goaltenders that people would have been like, okay, these are the best goalies. Who are the 2 assistant coaches on Canada? Do you know who they are?
One I know is Bruce Cassidy.
The other one, Pete DeBoer.
And both of those players are familiar with Logan Thompson. And I heard a rumor that
they didn't want him.
That Logan Thompson and Aiden Hill had some beef, that they hated backing each other up.
Right.
And the reason why Logan Thompson
detective work
taken is because they didn't want to deal with that behind the scenes and mess with the chemistry. Because Just
which
like a
is
real
stupid. Like, you picked the best goalie, in my opinion.
and
I
you don't
think
bring
like
Aiden Hill. That's the point. You take the
and
best goalie.
I'd be
and then
okay with that, though. To me, you take the best guy who's playing the best. Logan, I know Logan Thompson doesn't have the, he doesn't have because he didn't win the cup with Vegas. That was Hill, but he doesn't have maybe the accomplishments that a Jordan Binnington does. But I don't know, man. Like, I'm at home and I hate to rag on the goalie, and I think, Canada giving up those leads against Sweden and Finland yesterday, or almost blowing it against Finland yesterday. That's not on the goalie. That's, Crosby made a terrible play in the U.S. game. I think he made a similar one the other night too. It's on the team as a whole, but you got to look at some of these goals and be like, I don't know, like, you can't afford, like, in a game against the U.S., and this is where, and you and I kind of disagreed with this too in our DMs, but because talking about Saturday's game, but I felt like that game was a game of inches, and the U.S. just played a better game, and they did a great job of how I looked at that game was they shut down McKinnon and Connor McDavid. And that's really hard to do. And I thought, like, they couldn't get any good opportunities. I think the shots were similar, but if you look at overall, like, high danger chances and all that, the U.S. was certainly better than Canada in that spot, and that's why they won the game. But I also think that, like, Binnington, I don't think Binnington could have done much on that second goal that you guys ended up scoring on Saturday. But again, yesterday, there was a couple goals where it's like, if that happens against the U.S., it's not going to be competitive. Like, you can't let goals in like that. So I don't know. Am I being too hard on Binnington? What have you made of his, because I feel like he's up and down. There's times when he makes good saves, but the inconsistency is what bothers me.
I think versus Finland and Sweden, he was very questionable. I think against the USA, people are making fun of that Jake Gensel goal. And I think just because optically, when you get beat 5-hole, it's embarrassing. Similarly to soccer, if you nutmeg someone, it goes between your legs. You're like, dude, what are you doing? But one thing that people don't talk about is Jake Gensel's a big game player. He's won huge games for the Pittsburgh Penguins. People are bashing Austin Matthews for not scoring. Meanwhile, on his line, on his power play unit, Jake Gensel's leading the tournament in goals. And the biggest part of Austin Matthews' game that I've noticed watching him consistently and rooting for him, because no secret here, I'm a Columbus Blue Jackets fan. I don't like the Leafs. Watching Matthews and supporting him for game after game, this guy's defensive regimen is incredible. There was a odd man rush that he stopped with a stick lift from behind versus Canada that single-handedly stopped a goal. And I'm so impressed with the little plays he makes on both sides of the puck. I think he's having a fantastic tournament, although he hasn't scored a goal.
What are some other things that have stood out for you in the tournament? For me, again, I think the play of Crosby and McKinnon has been very good, especially McKinnon getting what he got. I think it was 2 goals yesterday. You can just see it. McDavid, like, when he's on, there's so few players that can do what he does, where, like, he can circle around like that. I think it was the first goal against Finland yesterday, where, like, he sort of skates around and he's like, I got to get it perfect, like how I want it. And he sort of skates around the defenseman, comes back, and then he just, like, the shot is just a total laser. Like, they need that was missing in the U.S. game, and that's credit to the U.S. and their ability to shut down those players. Like McDavid had no lane, McKinnon had no lane, because you had other players on the U.S. that were neutralizing that as well. Those are two that stand out. I think Hellebuck's played great this entire tournament. You mentioned the less goals. I think the defense as a whole has been good, and I think just the grit, like, the 3 fights in a couple minutes of that game, like, that's good though. But they have a lot of character guys, and I think that's another reason. Like, U.S. has the talent clearly, but I think also having those character guys like the Chuck brothers, JT Miller, like, that is really what is making the difference for them too. And I think Canada has some of that, but that is certainly what is overshadowing everything else in this tournament to me, is those character guys that can really step up and rile guys up.
I totally agree. And that's why I sided with the U.S. at the beginning of the tournament. When you had me on the show originally, my main point about the U.S. was the bottom 6 forward group has scoring touch, and they are absolute dogs. And that's seemingly what the difference is, because what stopped Canada was the big bodies clogging up the neutral zone to limit you guys getting speed. You had the one goal where McDavid sliced through the neutral zone, skated right between Werenski, skating 752 miles an hour. But besides that, it was a hornet's nest in the neutral zone, and we slowed you guys down the whole time. My number one, I don't know if you could even call him underrated because of the stat line that he has this tournament, but he's definitely not getting in the headlines and not getting the proper respect. Zachary Werenski, leading Team USA in points, promoted to the top power play unit, firing the puck like a monster. Before this tournament, I was a little bit worried without Quinn Hughes what would happen. Obviously, I know being a CBJ fan, what Zach Werenski's capable on the power play. But my goodness, he is killing it for the United States men's national team. And he's making huge plays on defense as well, because people don't realize he's actually pretty big. He's 6'2" and he's got a big body and he can throw it around. This is the first season in a long time he hasn't gotten injured, and he looks fantastic. He's more or less been the best player on our entire team.
Now, on the flip side, some things that have stuck out in the negative sense. Kevin Lankinen didn't play very well yesterday. And actually, there was a Vancouver, Dave Hall, who we've had on the show. Love Dave. Does a really good job with the Canucks prospects. He had a good tweet yesterday being like, Patrick Alvin's probably watching this going, good that you had a bad game, because now we can negotiate you a lower cap hit if we want to re-sign him, which I think the Canucks will. That seems to be a big priority for the Canucks, is keeping Kevin Lankinen. So that was good. But the big one, though, that everyone's talking about right now, Elias Pettersson. It's been the same. Like, it's, a lot of people would be like, okay, it's just Vancouver. He's not playing well. It's Miller. Okay, they trade Miller. Not much of a difference. Now they're in a completely different thing, a tournament. Pettersson's got no points. Kevin Lankinen has more points than Elias Pettersson in this tournament, and they had to move him to the wing. I'm sure you've noticed that or seen that, but like, this is a real problem right now, because this was supposed to be something where maybe Pettersson in a different environment would thrive, but I mean, is it an injury? Like, again, I don't know if it's the injury thing, because like, why is he playing if he's injured? If you're not being productive, 0 points is good for nobody. So I don't know what this is, but it's very concerning for the Canucks, in my opinion.
Yeah, if I'm a Vancouver fan, I'm hitting the panic button, because as you know, a couple months ago, I was in the minority of people saying that Elias Pettersson should be the one traded, because yes, he has multiple 100-point seasons. And the more time that passes by, he loses value. And you know how this league is. It's a triple hard salary cap. And it doesn't matter how good you are. If you are not outperforming your AAV, you are a cap casualty. And he is getting paid a ton of money. So for him to at least equal or exceed that, he has to be getting at least 90 points a season. So some team with a ton of cap space is going to have to roll the dice, whether that be Utah, whether it be Chicago. Some team's going to have to make a run, and he is playing with insanely talented players at even strength. He was playing on a line with Adrian Kempe, who, in my opinion, could be one of the most underrated players in the entire league. He's got no excuses. And if I remember correctly, I saw something on Twitter that he didn't have a shot on goal or a hit in the entire tournament. So, yeah, I'm putting the panic meter all the way up to 10 for you guys, because this is not good.
And the thing is, you're not going to get a good return, but then it's like, to me, the risk is bigger of having a contract like that of a player that's not performing. Like, you don't like the timing of this is so interesting, because like they have basically till July to decide if they want to dump him or whatever. And I think at this point, it's like, just get rid of the contract. Cause like, you can't, like, you risk, like, if it is an injury thing, okay, do you get him the best people? Like, this should have been done last summer. Like, if this is what I don't get. Like, there is a pro Pettersson crowd in Vancouver that's like, clearly he's playing with an injury, because they brought up the wrist. He said he didn't have a wrist injury a couple of years ago. Turns out he did. And then when he got that fixed, he was kind of back to his old self. They think the same thing here is happening with the knee. But what if it doesn't get better? That's the thing. Like, you don't want another, like, I'm trying to think of like a really bad contract of somebody like, like Huberdeau almost until this year. But like, you don't want that as like a cap liability. So I don't know. I think, and the Canucks seemed like a management group that are not willing to go down that road with Pettersson. So I think this is only accelerated getting rid of him at this point. We'll see what they do at the deadline, but there's a lot of question marks now with Elias Pettersson. I hate to be doom and gloom, because listen, he's my son's favorite player. I have his jersey, all that stuff. Like, I want to see him succeed, but I don't know how. I think what would be worse is having another Louis Eriksson.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And another reason why justifying the panic meter being a 10 out of 10, let's call it like it is. This guy doesn't have a lot of muscle on him. He's a twig. Yeah. His play style is not conducive to a Rick Tocchet team. It is not conducive to playoff success. Sure, he can operate the power play and play fantastic, but at even strength, when people are battling in the corners, he is nowhere to be found. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to have all of it, and I know people give him credit for his defensive play and all that, but that you don't need a $11.6 million defensive specialist. You need an offensive player. Sorry, I missed your question here. Not sure if Hughes is an option for them before the tournament. Believe he's staying. Not sure. Okay, so not sure if Hughes is an option for them with his injury before the tournament. Believe he is staying rested for the rest of the Canucks season. I don't know about that. If he's ready to play, I'm assuming that the injury is better because there's an oblique thing. So I don't think that he's like going to rest with the Canucks when he gets back. That was the whole reason, was that he didn't do this tournament, is that he didn't want to make things worse. And if the Canucks are in a playoff position with JR right now, like, as a captain, that's a bad look if you play and then you get injured. Although saying that, like, how often you get to play for your country. So I don't know. This whole Hughes thing is to me is a big factor in all this. If he's playing, like, it really changes the dynamic. Now, saying that, the one thing we did talk about on here too, and I want to get your take on this. Cale Makar plays on Thursday. That's gonna make things interesting too, because he is the best Canadian defenseman in the league. I think he's the second best defenseman in the league behind Quinn Hughes. What do you think of that?
Well,
or maybe Zach Werenski, but whatever.
I think
we'll
Makar is the best defenseman in the league, personally. That's just me. He's kind of, I mean, you're really nitpicking between Werenski, Hughes, and Makar. I think I agree.
They're in that same level.
Any team would kill to have players like that, because at even strength, they're not just power play specialists. At even strength, they do incredible things. They can put up a ton of minutes. I feel like Cale Makar is the sweet spot between Cale and Werenski, because he's a little bit bigger than Quinn Hughes. He's a little bit smaller than Werenski. Insane explosive skating. The paths he finds with wrist shots to the net are absolutely unbelievable. And his stick checking is absolutely unbelievable, Cale Makar. And I think he's going to be a huge difference maker for you guys. But the biggest difference maker that I think that will give Canada success is John Cooper moving Braden Point up to the line with Connor McDavid, because clearly Connor McDavid didn't have a line mate that had the foot speed to roll with him. Obviously, the players were skilled enough. We saw Sam Reinert, and we know this. Braden Point and Sam Reinert are easily the two best bumper slot players on the power play in the entire NHL. They can seamlessly swap out on the power play units, and we've seen Braden Point in the World Juniors with Nathan McKinnon playing with insanely fast players. And when he has to move out to the wing, he doesn't get that opportunity in Tampa because they need him as a top-line center. But if he has to, he totally has the skill set. I had a ridiculous 7.5 to 1 parlay over that Canada game that entailed Braden Point scoring a goal and McDavid and McKinnon getting a point, because I said, this guy is the high skill player they needed. Marner's afraid to shoot the puck. I know he got the game winner in overtime, but at even strength, he's literally been invisible this tournament, in my opinion.
I'm going to bring up the line combos here. Well, actually, no, before I do that, what you sort of touched on it a bit. What has worked betting wise for you this, tournament? Because one of the things that you're obviously great with the shots on goal and all that. I feel like some of the books here, they need to do a better job of that. Even yesterday, one of the books I was at wasn't even offering odds for the game yesterday. I don't know why, like not right before. It was like live betting they do, but I don't know if there's, stuff going on there. But I noticed, like, obviously anytime goal score, you're going to get plus money on a lot of those. The shots on goal, they have some specials too. One of the specials that I like, and I cashed in on this earlier this week, was the like, you could do like Nathan McKinnon to score and Canada to win type thing. So you could get like, that goes up to like plus 330 or something. So what are some ones that you found have worked well for you so far during this tournament?
Jake Gensel, he's been a moneymaker for me all tournament. If you get him for a point or 3 shots, especially for someone that's literally playing top line, top power play unit, the value is just absolutely off the charts. The prices went up a little bit because people have seen the trend and how successful he's been over time. But the other thing that I encourage you guys to do is when you're on X leading up to the game, 20, 30 minutes before the game, and there's line rushes, the lines change. Because as you alluded to before, when news officially broke that Braden Point was going to be on McDavid's line, all the shots on goal and point props were locked until they adjusted, because the books know it's dangerous putting up basically an even money bet on someone playing with McDavid. You're playing with fire, and they had to slightly adjust it. And even when they slightly adjusted, they got hammered yesterday.
Yeah, that's the shots on goal one. Yeah, if you're playing with McDavid, you're going to get some shots on there as well. This is actually, so just so people know, this channel has nothing to do with Fanatics, the clothing company, at all. This is, the company's called Fanatics View. My guy Taylor runs this. Speaking of which, wanted to mention we do have some great content here from the Four Nations. We actually have a reporter on site in Montreal for Fanatics View, getting a lot of the stuff that you see here. Jack Hughes, Mike Sullivan. We've even got some, some in-arena stuff here too, which is awesome. So again, Fanatics View has you covered. Look at all this content here just for the Four Nations. This is just over the last week. So if you guys are looking for content, definitely make sure you're checking out Fanatics View. Always up, always pre-game stuff and post-game stuff as well. Let's get to the line.
And I
combos
use
here.
these
Oh, sorry,
interviews
go
a
ahead.
ton. I just want to say one thing about these interviews, because
Yeah.
it's really hard to find these post-match pressers other places on YouTube. And as if you can check on these videos, I'm literally commenting on them and watching every single one, because John Cooper and Mike Sullivan are so insightful. And before the lines change officially, you can hear some of the issues they need to address, and you start thinking. So I highly encourage you guys, if you're on the betting angle of this, you need to check this out, because as soon as the news officially breaks out right before the game, the lines move and it's gone. So you have to make educated guesses based off these press conferences.
Yeah, it's very, very insightful. Great stuff there. Let's look at the line combos. So again, these do, I believe, stay up to date. You mentioned Point being on the first line with Mark Stone. I really do like that. And then Brad Marchand brought down to the fourth line, but that's understandable. And then they do have Cale Makar slotted in here, so I believe he will play Thursday. That Colorado line makes sense. Second line's good. Third line's a bit shaky, but you still got Drew Doughty there, who's got all that experience. And then it looks like they're going to be going with Binnington in net. Yeah, I mean, again, I think we're going to see a different. I've said this before. I think we're going to see the same result with U.S. winning on Thursday, but I think we're going to see a slightly different game with. Well, just for a variety of reasons. Number one, like, obviously you're going to have Makar back for Canada. That's going to help. Number two, I think all the fighting and the emotion in that first game, that kind of, it worked in the U.S.'s favor, did not work in Canada's favor. It seemed like they were not as, had as much jump after that. You saw more jump, I think, yesterday in that game, especially with the start of it, with Canada, getting off to such a strong start here. So I think we're going to see a little bit of a different game there. But again, if the U.S. is going to have Quinn Hughes tomorrow, I mean, that changes everything. So just looking at the roster here, do they have Quinn Hughes on here? They don't yet. I guess they gotta get my guy Stephen Ellis to update that on there. But yeah, I mean, this line, I mean, just look at this, like, star power in there. And then again, these are all, you have a good mix too of role guys too, right? So just your thoughts on the lineups and how they could look for Thursday.
Yeah, so assuming that Austin Matthews goes back onto the top line and the second line wingers are the Tkachuk brothers. Listen, call me crazy. I don't really think it's out of the realm of possibility that Chris Kreider stays in the lineup and Kyle Connor gets bumped. Hear me out. Kyle Connor, obviously, he started this tournament on the top line with Jack Eichel and Matthew Tkachuk. So clearly he was brought in here to put up some big minutes and be a big, impactful offensive guy. As we said about Pettersson before, let's be honest, this guy's a twig. He's got no muscle on him, Kyle Connor. And he is not suited for a bottom six role. I think Chris Kreider is way more suited for a bottom six role. He's still fast as anything. He's good in front of the net. He scored 35 seconds into the game the other day. And I personally think there's a really good chance Chris Kreider stays in the lineup and Kyle Connor's a healthy scratch in this final game. Okay.
Good to keep in mind for that. I might be wrong about this. Maybe I just haven't been paying attention enough. Jack Hughes really hasn't really I don't think he's played bad, but I don't think I've really noticed him as much as some of the other players in there. Is that accurate, or am I out to lunch? Maybe I need to pay a little more attention, but I feel like Hughes would have made more of an impact.
I think it's fair, and there's a reoccurring theme with underperforming players that have been discussed in this tournament. A lot of them are small or skinny. Jack Hughes, Elias Pettersson. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Kyle Connor, this playoff style hockey doesn't really suit these guys. And yeah, there's a few times Jack Hughes was in some good positions, getting some dangerous shots on the power play. But at even strength, he's basically, this is what he's limited to. He's bringing the puck up the ice in the neutral zone. Someone tries to rub him out against the wall. He lays it off to Austin Matthews to enter the zone. He's getting phased out of plays at even strength very quickly because of his size. And that's the truth of the matter. I agree with you.
We're going to get a rematch, obviously. So they're playing, if I'm not mistaken, they're going to do, obviously they're doing the final on Thursday. Are they doing another game with Sweden and Finland, or are they done? I was trying to remember that.
They don't play another game, I believe.
No. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. So they get a couple days off in between. So Thursday will be coming up. Maybe just quickly, before we move on to some NHL news, just kind of looking back on Finland. I mean, they put up a good effort. I don't think people thought they were going to beat Sweden. They did end up doing that. Almost came back against Canada, which again, that's another thing that's a bit of a worry going to this U.S. game. Like, how do you give up, take your foot off the gas against Finland? Just thoughts on Finland. Like, again, there was a couple players I thought really stepped up. The goaltending was, I thought Lankinen played well at certain points and then didn't play so well yesterday. Saros, I thought, played all right. Just your thoughts on Finland and maybe where they go from here. Because obviously these guys, this is a nice appetizer to the Olympics next year.
Yeah, so first off, I think Dallas Stars fans have to be buzzing. Mikael Granlund erupted this tournament. And before this tournament, a lot of people were complaining, oh my God, I can't believe the Sharks got such a big return from Mikael Granlund. The Dallas Stars overpaid, blah, 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 blah. This guy was a former first-round pick for a reason. And just because you're not a top-line player and you're drafted in the first round doesn't mean you're a flop. This guy is a serviceable middle six forward, especially on a contending team. And Lundell and Luosterainen, the bottom six forward group in the Florida Panthers, I thought they played absolutely fantastic. One thing that I would honestly consider moving forward for Team Finland is Patrick Laine was yet again, he entered into this tournament cold. He was basically rendered ineffective at even strength. And as a Columbus Blue Jackets fan, I know he's extremely streaky. 10 games in a row, 10 goals, 10 games in a row. He won't even shoot the puck. So I think he's a player that I don't think it's guaranteed that he'll make Team Finland in the next tournament.
Which would be next year, I guess, the Olympics. And then just quickly, we'll go over Sweden. I thought Brett actually had a good tournament. I noticed Nylander out there a little bit. Joel Eriksson, I'm a huge fan of him. He definitely contributed. Elias Lindholm got on that penalty yesterday. Lindholm, man, like this is a guy that, he's Boston's first line center, or was supposed to be, and now he's struggling to do well here. Him and Pettersson, not so great. Any sort of takeaways from Team Sweden?
Yeah, when I was watching Team Sweden, from the beginning of the tournament, I was under the impression they had the best defense in the entire tournament. Victor Hedman is so underappreciated. I mean, seriously, he does everything so well. And in a sport in the NHL where these defensemen are praised so much for their offensive capability, it's the actual defensive aspect of the game for these guys is overlooked so much. I really think they need to incorporate a defensive defenseman award for players like this. Victor Hedman has shown that he's Norris level. He's an alpha. He can do it on the power play if he needs to. But one thing that I think so awesome about him is he could take a step back and let the other players shine if he has to. And that's what you need when you have to win championships, because if you have too many guys wanting to be the man, it doesn't work.
Yep. Curious to see what they look like next year in the Olympics. But again, decent effort. And like I said, this tournament's really been about Canada and the US in terms of, the two favored teams. There hasn't been that many surprises with some of the other results and things that are happening. Let's look ahead a bit, because obviously the NHL is going to be back next week, or maybe even this weekend. I'm trying to remember even the schedule here, but there was a quick little signing that I wanted to get your take on that just got announced before we hopped on here. Let me find it. Or maybe I didn't retweet it. I thought I did. Okay, one sec. Drew O'Connor re-signs with the Canucks. That's the spoiler alert I wanted to get there. But it looks like the Canucks have now locked up two of the big parts of the JT Miller trade. And we got the numbers here. I'm going to put it on the screen. Just your thoughts on this contract. Sorry, I should have this up, but me doing it live. So yeah, pretty decent hit here. Only 2 years. And I'm guessing that's kind of like, hey, they just want to see, like, he'll be a UFA. I like this move because, you get him for a couple more years. You can, I'm sure they're hoping as well that they have players in the system that can maybe step up into that role if it doesn't work out. If it does work out, then maybe you think about keeping him. But Patrick Allvin, one of the things I really love about him as a GM is that he has done a very good job of getting team-friendly contracts. Marcus Pettersson, I think, was better than what he would have got if he was a UFA. Now you get Drew O'Connor, 2-year contract, but very low cap hit. Just your thoughts on the deal. I know it's not like a huge thing, but it is an extension of the JT Miller trade, which I think is worth noting.
First things first, I think at least year-wise, this is the meta and the way that GMs ought to approach the bottom six forwards in terms of contracts and structuring the team's 5-year plan moving forward. You need to sign your bottom six forwards to 1 to 2 year contracts because they play a taxing style because they're killing penalties. They're throwing the body around. They're trying to influence the game in different ways. Drew O'Connor specifically, he's got a set of wheels on him. He's fast as anything. And their performances fluctuate a ton. These third and fourth line players can have a career year from 1 year to the next because one injury goes up or down. Their time on ice and deployment changes completely. And you see with teams like the New York Islanders, who give third and fourth line players enormous term contracts, it turns around and bites them in the ass because they can't get rid of these players. So I think Drew O'Connor is one of the most underrated third line players in the NHL. He's one of those guys that if you're on a Stanley Cup contending team, game after game in the playoffs, you go, man, those were some huge penalty kills. Those are some huge even strength disruptions that this player had. I think this is a great signing by the Canucks.
Some other rumors that are going around right now. I just seen this on the hockey news, and then we'll get to Columbus Blue Jackets in a sec, because obviously that's your team. There's some talk about Brad Marchand, Erik Karlsson. I know Ottawa's kind of been linked to Karlsson. Obviously, he started his career there. Brad Marchand, I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing Brad Marchand getting traded out of Boston. He's like Mr. Boston. But any thoughts or ideas on these two potentially, going elsewhere at the trade deadline?
Listen, I think the right thing to do for the Boston Bruins would be to trade Brad Marchand, but I don't think they'll do it. You have to consider the 5-year plan moving forward with this Boston Bruins team. The prospect pool is decimated. They've leveraged the future by trading away draft picks and all these guys. They are going to have a tough time building it back up. And that's the truth of the matter. Yes, it's a great city. Yes, they're an Original Six team. They're not going to have any problem recruiting players through free agency, but you really find a hard time to get value on contracts when you go through free agency because you're bidding against all the other 31 teams in the NHL. So I don't think it's likely that he actually gets traded because he's the captain and he embodies what the Boston Bruins represent so well. But I think they should. I really think they should go out and fetch a return for him to help replenish the prospect pool. And similarly to the Pittsburgh Penguins, Kyle Dubas is digging a grave for himself with all these horrible moves. He didn't even protect Jared McCann in the expansion draft. Yeah, and he's the best player on the Seattle Kraken for how many years? When he was on the Pittsburgh Penguins, he was one of the most underrated second-line centers in the league, him and Nazem Kadri 3 or 4 years ago. And it's like, now you're going to have to take a loss on Erik Karlsson. Oh, my God. Kyle Dubas, I don't even know how this guy has a job, quite frankly.
We've talked about this in our DMs. Yeah, not a fan of Dubas. Quick clarification. So Elliot Friedman tweeting out, I'm told another injury is needed for Quinn Hughes to play. So I was right about that. So someone else would have to come out. Is someone going to have a mysterious injury that we don't know about? We'll see. So yeah, I was correct. You can't just come in. It has to be some other injury. But I'm sure the U.S. will figure something out there. So your thoughts on that?
I'm hearing from Frank Saravalli that Matthew Tkachuk could barely walk to the team bus. So if there's any player that's not going to be ready and healthy to go, it's probably him. I don't want that.
So they could, yeah. So I guess they could do it even if it's a forward and then they just move someone else up, or like, how does that work?
Yeah. So I think that's what's going to, I think it's, what is it? I think they need to get 2 players out and they can do that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is the other thing. And before the tournament, I was one of these people. So I'll admit it. I was wrong. Before this tournament, I said, why on earth would they bring Chris Kreider to this team? I was pissed. I couldn't believe they did it. But in the circumstance of this Matthew Tkachuk injury, like-for-like replacement at the net front on the power play. So that's great. He's got speed. He can play top 6 if you give him the skilled players. It's not his fault he just got demoted to the third line for the Rangers and was stuck with playing Mika Zibanejad, one of the worst players in the NHL this season. So I don't think his performance in the NHL is to any wrongdoing of his own. And I was wrong about Chris Kreider. I think ultimately, with the way these injuries are panning out, Bill Guerin's looking like a genius bringing him in, because there's really no other guys that can run that net front power play role quite like Matthew Tkachuk and Chris Kreider.
Yeah, so that's, again, going to be a big factor in this game. But like I said, we're both picking U.S. to win. Whether Hughes is in or not, I think they still get it done. There's one more thing I wanted to get to, and then we'll get to the Jackets because I forgot about this. Mike Grinnell of Barstool of Spit and Chicklets tweeted this last night. Next coach of the Boston Bruins. One thing that's totally getting lost in the shuffle with the Canucks is that Rick Tocchet is an option for next season. I mean, again, Rutherford and Patrick Allvin were the ones that hired Rick Tocchet. They went out of their way. That whole disaster with Bruce Boudreau, and they bring in Tocchet. I think the only way Tocchet doesn't come back is if there's like, this season has been so much of a, because it has been a challenging season. I think it would have to be his decision if he didn't want to come back. But what do you think of this? I don't know. Like, I think I don't know if he's just trolling or if there's some insight there too. But what was your reaction seeing this? I don't know if you caught it.
I'm seeing this for the first time right now, but this is what I think. If one domino falls, they will all fall. If the Canucks feel like they need to move on from Elias Pettersson, maybe Rick Tocchet follows. They figure out that they don't want to bring Rick Tocchet back for whatever reason. Maybe they're going to blow it up and start a full-blown rebuild. I really, truly believe that the Vancouver Canucks are in the 10 out of 10 panic meter because they were forced to trade JT Miller at a time they did not want to. And with Pettersson's stock rapidly dropping, and like you said, this golden nugget of information from the rumor boys, this could spell disaster incoming for the Vancouver Canucks. This is not good.
And you know what's weird too? There's Canucks fans that are probably happy about this, in the sense of that, you know, when the Canucks were losing, the style of play was not I mean, it's still not appealing to watch. It's dump and chase and all this, and you know, like when they were winning, it was no big deal. But now that they're losing, it's kind of like, you know, is this a coaching issue? Do they miss, you know, Mike Yeo on the bench, who is, you know, kind of more of like an X's and O's guy that's now in Ottawa? You know, so it's another sort of storyline to keep in mind. But I don't think they're there yet in terms of the rebuild thing, because like, why are you signing Marcus Pettersson to a long contract? Why are you, you know, Drew O'Connor's back? Like, I think they're trying to make this work as best as they can for Quinn Hughes. I mean, Hughes might leave anyways, but I think that a lot of this stuff kind of factors in. And man, I'll just say this: like, I don't want Tocchet to leave. Like, I know people have not been happy with the style of play, but like, that'll be what, 3 coaches in the last however many years: Green, Boudreau, and then Tocchet. Like, it's not, you know, it's not on the coaching. You know what I mean? Like, it's at some point it's got to be on the core. And they did trade one of those big core pieces, obviously, in JT Miller. But yeah, I don't know. I just my mind would explode if that ends up happening. So I don't know. We'll see.
Rebuild is obviously worst case scenario. They don't want that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But if Elias Pettersson finishes the season on an absolute stinker and management says, I don't want to be stuck with this guy when the no move gets kicked in, because we see the reception that the New York Rangers and Chris Drury got when they put the pressure on Jacob Trouba and Barclay Goodrow and forced them out with those no move and no trade clauses up against what was on the contract. And it's really ruthless. Was it the right thing to do for the Rangers? Yes. But it's not a coincidence that the team was playing so bad during that whole ordeal with the way management had to treat it. And I think what the Canucks need to do, whether they make it to the playoffs or not, is they cannot panic. They have to get to the end of the season and be realistic.
I agree. I think, though, where you and I disagree is I think if they trade Pettersson, I don't think that signals a rebuild. I just think, because here's the thing, because I look at this differently, and it was even with the Miller trade too, where people are like, man, they lost the Miller trade. What they gain, though, with trading Miller is the cap space. You can recoup those assets. Like, they could, for example, like if they get Brock Besser traded, you're probably getting a first round pick, I would think, even for a rental, as good as he is. Then they flip that first round pick for someone that is a better fit with the Canucks, that, you know, is someone that they can invest in long term, maybe a similar Brock Besser player, but someone that's younger and someone that can fill that role, or maybe they look for a center. I don't think you do rebuild, because this team's not afraid to make trades. I think they're actually one of the most active GMs in the league right now. I think if they do rebuild, then everyone's gone. I think you trade Pettersson. I think they would just be looking to somehow replace that with other assets. Not to mention they got guys coming up, like you have Jonathan Lekramaki. They eventually think that he will be Brock's replacement. Maybe you get like a veteran winger in there for a year or two until he's more ready. On defense, that's why they're talking about trading Carson Soucy, because they now have Marcus Pettersson on the back end on the left side. Soucy makes a lot more. I think the thought is Tom Willander will play next year. He's having a great year at BU. So he's someone that they're looking at. The other Elias Pettersson on the defense is playing well as well. So that's working out. So I just think that, like, I think even if they do go away from Pettersson, I don't think that necessarily means a rebuild. I think it's more of a retool. I think a rebuild is you're just getting, like, selling off all your assets. And that to me is like, you know that Hughes isn't coming back and you just start selling everything. So I don't know. We'll see.
I think what differentiates between the rebuild and the retool is what the return is. If Vancouver goes, let's get rid of Elias Pettersson and get Owen Power and Dylan Cousins, that's a retool.
Right.
If they turn to Utah and go, I want 2 first-round picks and a mid-tier prospect, that's rebuild. You see what I'm saying?
But they did that with Miller, and they flipped that first round pick for Pettersson like that. They did it with Bo Horvat, right? They got the first round pick from the Islanders. They flipped that first round pick to Detroit to get Filip Hronek. Same sort of thing. So that's what I mean. Like, I don't think it's a rebuild. It's only a rebuild if they're like Anaheim and Montreal and they're just stacking up picks and they're going to save them for a rainy day type thing. But this GM has been known, and I guarantee you before they did, well, I mean, they obviously did because it happened the same night, but like they probably are like looking 3 steps ahead where they're like, okay, we're going to get this first round pick from this team for whoever, and then we're going to flip that for a player that can play now. Like, I would not be surprised, for example, if they use that. Like, I'm assuming everything I'm hearing, Besser's gone. Like, I think that's, yeah, which makes sense. So to me, I could see them going out and getting a pick or something, then flipping that pick for, and you can't do this all the time. Not every team wants a first round pick, but flipping that pick for, say, like someone that could maybe be a second line center. Because I don't know if they see Cheadle as that long term with his health and all that. I don't know if that's the plan, or maybe they bring in someone that's similar to Cheadle and it's like, okay, out of you two, who's the second line center? Like, I could see them doing something like that. So that's where, like, normally if this was any other GM, I'd be like, yeah, this does signal a rebuild. But I think because this management group has been known to, take any sort of assets they had and flip them, I could see them just doing a retool. Does that make sense? That's where I'm at.
Yeah, it does. And I think Filip Chytil, he suits a second line center role perfectly. Because like you said, the health is always a question because of the concussion history. But on the Rangers, when he was playing on the third line, there's a huge difference between second line center and third line center. Third line center is way more taxing on your body. Second line center, you could be the trigger man on power play 1 and leading the even strength charge. And mark my words, I said this when he was on the Rangers. Filip Chytil's better than Lafreniere. He's better than Kakko. If he does not pan out to be a second line center for the future for you guys, I'll genuinely be astonished. Set it in stone. He's going to be getting 50-plus points for you guys for the next few years at second line center. He is so fast. His zone entries are fantastic. He's never seen a shot he doesn't like either. And I love Czech players, so that's another thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess, yeah, obviously the elephant, though, is the health, and we'll see if that holds up. I mean, saying that, like, Chris Tanev was always injury prone in Vancouver, or no, it was either he was always injury prone in Vancouver, and then he has like healthy seasons with Calgary. Was never really out that long. I know even with the Leafs, he's been playing better too. So it just depends. Sometimes players, I don't know, they things happen that you can't really predict. So there's that. Before we go, because we only have a couple more minutes left here, Columbus, obviously big tournament here for Rowensky. What are some things I think we talked about last time, like trade deadline and stuff? Like, what are your thoughts on the Blue Jackets? What they need to do to get in the playoffs, because things are really heating up in the East, especially for that 8 spot.
Yeah, so Don Waddell has said very publicly he feels like he owes this team, he owes this city to be buyers at the trade deadline because they're in contention. We have so much cap space, but he said he's not going to make a move just to make a move. He's only making a move that's helping them in the 5-year plan. So he addressed right off the rip, there's a lot of injuries we have right now. If there's any team that needed this 4 nations break to happen, it was us. We were on a 4-game losing streak heading into this. Marchenko broke his jaw. Monahan broke his wrist. All these injuries. Bang, bang, bang. No Jenner, no Chinikov. We needed it. And since we got rid of Laine, the truth of the matter is we need a top 6 winger. Not Laine's profile, but we do need a top 6 winger. And I believe, like you said before, when you are operating a team, you're thinking in 3D. You trade David Jiricek, you get your extra first-round pick. You're using that as your trade chip. Alex Tuch, you are the newest Columbus Blue Jacket. Because there's rumors of him going to LA. There's rumors of him going to Tampa. His name is out there. And he's from Buffalo. Clearly, they feel like they can move on from him for one reason or another. He was insanely effective as a third-line winger for Vegas. One of the best players in terms of efficiency when he was in that role. When he went to Buffalo, got the time on ice and deployment boost, continued to play well. He would be fantastic as a second-line winger playing with Adam Fantilli and Kent Johnson. Bring the size, keep Voronkov up there with Monahan and Marchenko, and he could also play in the first or second power play unit if we have to. Clearly, we need a second-line winger. That's my honest opinion. I think we also need to re-sign Provorov. Before the season, if you ask me, do you think you should re-sign Provorov? I'd say probably about 90% no. But with a team that, for some reason, over the past few years has been plagued with injuries, he was the only player last year who played every single game. This year, He broke his finger, comes right back, doesn't even miss the game, comes back, plays the whole game, doesn't miss a game moving forward. And from all accounts, I was watching a Spit and Chicklets podcast where they obviously just got Keith Yandel onto the team, and he played in Philadelphia with Ivan Provorov, and he said, this guy takes his body and conditioning so seriously, I wouldn't be shocked if he played until he was 40. So his brother also just became an Ohio State Buckeye and committed there to college, which is also in Columbus. So if you're looking at how things are falling into place,
didn't know that.
I think Don Waddell is going to re-sign him. And there's a common theme with these Russian players and also Dan Milstein represented players. The Russian players are not afraid to take short-term contracts because they know the cap's going up. Gavrikov did it in LA 2 years ago when he signed that contract. I was even thinking to myself, because he was on the Blue Jackets, incredible defensive defenseman. When he signed that short-term contract, I'm like, dude, are you nuts? And you see him this year, he's one of the best defensive defensemen in the league, and he's about to cash in on this next contract. Marchenko, Chinikov, all these Russians, they're signing short-term deals. So I would be shocked if Provorov even signed a deal over 3 years. I think at the max end, he's going to sign a 5-year deal. But I think it's a consistent theme with these Russian players, 2 to 3 year deals, cash in when the salary cap's up a ton to get a bigger percentage of the cap.
Last question. Do you think there's a possibility with all your cap space that Waddell uses that to his advantage in bad contracts? I know you guys have a couple buyouts right now. I'm just looking here. Boquist, Wenberg. Do you think that's a possibility? Because I think teams that do have cap space should look at that to recoup more assets or get picks or anything along those lines. Is that something you think could be a possibility?
If we really fall out by the first week of March where the math doesn't look good for us, I think it's possible. If the contract expires at the end of the season to help a real playoff push, if we're anywhere near pushing, I think that there's no chance. But like I said, we're on a 4-game losing streak because of all these injuries. If we come back and we're on another 4-game losing streak to come back from 4 nations, there's no question in my mind we're doing that. But they're saying Marchenko is going to be back right after this thing, right after 4 nations is done. Monahan's supposed to be back a couple weeks after the Stadium Series. Boone Jenner is going to be back for the Stadium Series. Chinikov's supposed to be ready to rock. So we're going to have a huge uptick in healthy talent coming in.
Troy, this was awesome. Thanks again for stepping up and doing this. I'll be back next Wednesday, normal time, all that stuff. So appreciate everyone who tuned in here on Tuesday. I cannot wait for this game on Thursday. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to be in the States, so we'll see how that goes. Hopefully I won't get accosted or anything. We'll see. I don't know how hockey crazy people are in Seattle, but I don't know. I might just watch in my hotel room, honestly, just to avoid any hassles. And, I don't have anyone, yelling in my ear or anything. But where are you going to be watching the game on Thursday? You got any plans?
Yeah, I think I'm going to probably have to link up with my friends and watch this one in public because so many people are asking me to watch this. I don't know if I'll be able to host it at the house.
For sure. Yeah. There'd be a big crowd. You got a nice room there, though, behind you. That looks cool. Anything you got coming up? Let our audience know where they can follow you on Twitter and everything else. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, go follow me over on TikTok. It's Sleeper Man City. It's the Champions League today and tomorrow. All these teams are facing elimination. We'll see who moves on to the round of 16. I've got picks for all those games. Check that video out and let me know what you guys think.